Thanks for staying with us. Well, many of you may be aware of comments attributed to, comments by the governor of Cross River State, Governor Ayade, about how we should be dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic that's on our hands. So right now, joining us in our Abuja studio, we have Dr. Philip Wajobi Prince-Will, who is a consultant medical microbiologist from the National Hospital Abuja. Thanks for joining us this morning. You may be aware of some of those things that the Governor Ayade has said. Do you have any reactions to them?
Good morning. Well, Dr. Ayade is an intellectual, so I think he's entitled to his own opinion, but knowing that there are a lot of people who will be listening to things he said and be looking for guidance in terms of how we should face the pandemic, I think I have to say I disagree with some of the ways in which he has interpreted some of the facts we know about COVID-19. For example, the way he brought up the issue of HIV. Let's remember that it was some of the misconceptions that Thabo Mbeki had about HIV, that today South Africa has postulated that that's responsible for close to 300,000 cases that could have been avoided, and then of course the cascade that you have from those cases. It's easy to simplify some things when you look at facts, but you see, these are things you must take into cognizance, not just one or two facts, but put everything together and understand that in Nigeria, look at HIV today. We don't have that argument. We've realized that by bringing in proper treatment for HIV, we've been able to, within Nigeria, we can see that the rate of spread has reduced, and we have a lot of HIV people who are actually living healthy lives and carrying out their daily activities. I've been in HIV management for more than 10 years, and I will tell you, it wasn't just an issue about feeding them and all that. So it's not good to simplify things that much. Looking at the pandemic today, the issue of the vaccine, that's one of the ways to go. Why? Because remember that even if you have where you're able to contain and bring down the pandemic, you still have the COVID-19 that will, people who will be asymptomatic carriers carrying it around. We still have other possible coronaviruses out there. So the whole idea is this. You have millions of people who might potentially be infected. You can't keep all of them in lockdown. So how do you help them where they can interact with one another, come as close as possible to normal life, and then at the end of the day, many of them would not necessarily come down with clinical illness. They may get the infection, but it will be aborted. They look at issues of diseases like we have been able to control with vaccination. It is like smallpox, for example. Egypt's success with hepatitis B. You can see how Egypt has been able to reduce hepatitis B to the minimum with vaccination. So the whole idea of saying you just take someone's blood, take the antibodies from it, and then you put it into other people, it's simplistic. Antibodies are of different types. There are the antibodies that are meant to just mark the virus so that the body's immunity can take care of it. There are those ones we call neutralizing antibodies. Those are the ones that actually prevent the virus from being infective. So far, we don't know how much of the neutralizing antibodies are produced by people who have had a spell of COVID-19. So we are not yet sure how much the convalescent serum would help other people. So the vaccines are still in early trials. We have close to 10 to 15 candidates of the vaccine type, apart from drugs that are being tried out. And over the next, by end of May, we should be having the preliminary reports. But because vaccine trials will go through like 4 phases, so it's not going to be that simple where you can just go take serum from somebody's blood and then put it into another person's blood. Remember that every medical procedure you have has potential side effects. So I think the scientific committee is also being careful, so you don't create problems because you want to do a lot of shortcuts. You want to get to a quick fix for COVID, and then you have problems down the line. Let's remember that even people already have suspicions where vaccines are concerned. So we have to give them the confidence that any vaccine we are bringing into the market, that we have done the best possible in terms of investigating these vaccines, testing them out thoroughly, and that the chances of them causing more problems than they solve are minimal.
When you say the vaccines we're bringing into the market, and a lot of people will ask, what about the capacity we have right here in Nigeria? So how difficult is it really to develop something in Nigeria that can handle COVID-19?
In terms of vaccines, if you mean vaccines, well, we have had some capacity in terms of looking at vaccines. For example, in the issue of polio, But you see, these are not so easy because you need to have a robust biopharmaceutical industry, which Nigeria does not have. If you look at our market here, we don't really have any homegrown, robust biopharmaceutical, not just someone producing drugs. We are talking about issues of vaccines. And then you add that to the fact that even the companies who are involved in things, in this vaccines, most of them are actually just bringing in already made vaccines and putting into our normal cold chain way of passing the vaccines down to the end user. So it's not something you can develop overnight. We may have the expertise, but we don't have a lot of the hardware. What I mean in terms of having the factories, with the labs, with the equipment, some of these things we don't have. And these are some of the weaknesses we are realizing that we have allowed our health sector to develop over time. So it's not like we can wake up overnight in Nigeria and suddenly become a vaccine producer. There are some steps along the way. However, we can be involved in the worldwide clinical trials that would follow. Once some of these vaccines have gone through their phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, by the time they are moving into phase 4, I think they'll be looking for so different countries where these vaccines will be tested. I think that's where Nigeria would come in. We have the capacity then to bring in our expertise with guidance, of course, from WHO to try these vaccine trials in our own locality here. But in terms of moving straight to testing this vaccine, bringing out candidate vaccines, testing and all that, we do not have an inbuilt capacity and we don't have the experience.
Okay, you know what, we'll come back to this, especially because you said, there might be a phase where Nigerians might be tested, for the vaccine. That's a concern for a lot of people. So we'll go on this break, and when we come back, we'll get you to respond to that. Must the vaccines be tested in Nigeria, maybe, or in Africa? Please stay with us. Well, Prince Wajobi Prince-Will is still with us as a consultant microbiologist. Just before that break, we were talking about vaccine trials, and that has been a major source of controversy. What country it will be tried in? Is it in Africa? That started weeks ago. So how do we go about this?
Well, when it comes to introduction of any new agent you want to put in humans, you definitely have to be sure that that agent, when you do the smaller trials, you are with select populations, very small groups, could be 10, 15, 200. But then you want to find out if you take this into a bigger population pool, where you have other things we call, co-founders. For example, you want to see where you're able to touch every demographic, every age group, every gender, possible, job description, different climates and everything. So that's where you want to expand it. So you would want to say, okay, if we have tested this in a population in the US and it's okay for us, we found the benefits outweigh any possible adverse risk. So what do? You would want to now move it into a bigger population. So every vaccine, that's what's usually done for it. It's not like you are going to take it to a country and impose it on people. No, it's going to be where countries would key in. If Nigeria wants to, nobody's going to impose it on us. It will be said, okay, we have this vaccine. It's a trial thing. Remember, the vaccine for malaria was tested in Africa. The vaccine for Ebola, it was also tested when it came out. So it's a usual thing with vaccines. COVID will not be different, where you say, okay, we want to come look for 1,000, 2,000 and see the effect of this vaccine over time, because you want to be sure. We've had the experience with some vaccines like the one for dengue fever, where after it already gone out to the general population, it was even noted that giving the vaccine might help you for some and then make it worse for some other strains of the same virus. So testing is very important. And when you're going to go to a larger pool of people, that is where countries are involved. You want to see how many countries, for example, in Asia, select some countries in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, so that you have been able to touch almost every continent, every possible geographical area, and look at every possible factor that might affect the effectiveness of this vaccine. So that's what that phase of the trial is about. It's not that they're going to bring in vaccines and begin to pump them into people. It's always on a voluntary basis.
Okay, thank you so much for shedding light on that. Dr. Philip Prince-Will, Wajobi Prince-Will, is a consultant medical microbiologist. Thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, let's see. Can we squeeze in some emails then? Or messages, because we have some of them here. Well, I'm seeing Tunde, Henry, and Paddy. Well, let me see. Do we go with Tunde, Aremo, or which one do we have first now? Let's see that. Okay, I might as well just read this one. Henry goes, talking about the quarantine bill. If a young NCDC in 2018 could be so empowered, what happens to Federal Ministry of Health, NPHCDA, Port Health Services, and states' MDAs? Let's make haste slowly. We're at war. Let's win and end this war now. Future legislation will benefit from present experience.
Well, Tunde and Paddy, apologies, I guess we'll take some of that later. Well, there you go. That is that of Tunde. Well, okay. He says it helps if parliamentarians there focus more on the issues of rights and the danger inherent in concentrating too much power in an agency. This dwelling on the conspiracy theory is unhelpful and a big distraction. All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kayode Kikele.
I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Thank you for watching.